We rage about the media party here at the Rebel. You know what I'm talking about. The think-alikes. It's not just that they're liberal, which they almost always are. It's the lack of diversity. They're for diversity in all things. Race, gender, diversity except for intellectual diversity. Well, my guest today is a real treat. She breaks the mold. My friend Sue Ann Levy has a new book out. It's called Underdog, Confessions of a Right-Wing Gay Jewish Muckraker. And she joins me now in studio. Great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Ezra. I missed you.
Well, it's nice to see you here at Confessions of a Right-Wing Gay Jewish Muckraker. I'm ticking at least a few of those boxes. Tell me what it's like to be pretty much, I can count them on one hand, the conservative troublemakers in the city of Toronto. I mean, you're swimming against the current.
I am a very strong swimmer, so that's a good thing. Yes, I am indeed a salmon swimming upstream, and it's tough. It is really tough. It's a pretty lonely job sometimes.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to report the news that no one else does. That's sort of great because you get lots of scoops. You get, if everyone is chasing one dumb story and you're the only independent person, you would think that being a contrarian is a big win in journalism. But the mass, the pack, the Borg, they don't see it that way. They see you as a traitor. They see you as someone to be abused, not admired.
Yeah, I've been called every name in the book, not just by the so-called intellectual elites, and a number among them, the poverty pimps, the politicians, but certainly the left-wing media as well. And I mean, it just proved positive with this book coming out. I've actually been told I'm banned on certain media.
Can you tell us who?
Yeah, CP24. And
so that's a big, for our Toronto viewers know what that is, but that's the big, super big, round-the-clock news channel that everyone has on in like a cafe or a bar.
Yes.
They told you were banned. Why?
Well, apparently the GM of CP24 has taken a dislike to me. I have no idea why.
Well, I could guess.
Yeah, well, probably because I don't march to the same drumbeat. But also, a word has come to me that I've been called crazy. So crazy in Toronto, in lib-left Toronto, is code for smart, outspoken, you don't, talk the party line, you actually do your homework. Well, I'll take crazy anytime, but, I actually found myself a bit troubled by that word, because when they can't criticize what you write about and what you break, they engage in name calling.
Well, I'm shocked that you haven't been called bigot, because that's usually...
Oh, I've been called that.
But because you're a woman and because you're gay, it makes it a little tougher, for them to go at you like that. I mean, if you were a straight white male, they'd call you bigot in 1 second, which is what they called Rob Ford and what they're calling Donald Trump and what they're calling... anyone on the right. So you've got a couple of layers of Teflon there, so they just go for crazy. It's just an insult when they don't have a proper answer.
Well, this is the thing that troubles me, is that the very first 3 chapters of the book talk in a really honest and raw manner about me growing up as an outsider in my hometown of Hamilton, me being bullied. It also talks about me living in the closet for 20 years, afraid to deal with my sexuality, and then it also talks very openly about the 2 assaults I endured. The first time left for dead in Ottawa, my last year of journalism, and luckily I passed out and my assailant took off thinking he'd murdered me. The second one here in Toronto in 2004, sexual assault. And the trauma I dealt with, and I've talked very openly about seeking help from a psychiatrist. So when somebody calls you crazy and you've gone through this kind of thing, you think, it's very hurtful.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the politics, because that's why I know and love you, is because you zig where the other guys zag.
Exactly.
Let's take the example of Rob Ford. In some ways, a great success. A millionaire businessman. He's passed away now, of course, but him and his family, in some ways, a great success. But in other ways, never allowed to be part of the cool kids, the inside team. Tell me about your thoughts on the late Rob Ford, and even more importantly, how he was treated by the media clique, the cool kids, the Heathers, if you recall that movie from the 90s.
Yes, the mean girls and boys.
The fact that you dared cover him at least with balance. Like, he didn't go in with hatred. That's one of the reasons the other journalists hated you, isn't it?
Well, yes, and I go into great detail in the book, and I'm sure that's another reason that I've been banned from certain networks. I go into great detail about how Toronto, I felt, sunk to a new low. The liberal elites, those so-called tolerant people who were supposed to be very, very understanding and empathetic about someone who battles their addictions, who battled their addictions, such as Rob Ford. And I go into a lot of detail in that chapter about Rob Ford, about how he was bullied almost from the get-go at City Hall, for daring to stand up for the taxpayer, for daring to suggest that if you follow the pennies, the dollars would follow. And, you know, I talk about a number of anecdotes and how the media even mocked him, how the bureaucrats at City Hall mocked him. So, Ezra, this didn't start when he became mayor. This started as early as 2002 when he was a councillor, and he was bullied, vilified, and mocked for 10 years.
Yeah. You know, I've only been out here in Toronto for 5 years, so I'm still catching up on my Toronto civic politics. But one thing that's very interesting to me is here you have Rob Ford, the late Rob Ford. He's so white he's pink, physically.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at who supports him, it was new Canadians, immigrants,
Exactly.
minorities disproportionately supported Rob Ford. And here you are, a gay Jewish woman supporting Rob Ford. What's so fascinating to me is that he was a real-life bridge builder, real-life guy who showed tolerance and actual friendship. He volunteered with a high school football club that was more racially diverse than any newsroom in town. And he didn't do it for the cameras. He didn't. I mean, any politician will come, shake hands with a bunch of minority kids, and then go
for the show.
And say, "Where's my Purell?"
Yeah.
And then let me get back to my limo. Rob Ford, that was his favorite thing in life, actually, was coaching these kids, these poor kids, these lower income kids, letting them stay at his house. He genuinely had a connection with the deplorables, as Hillary Clinton would call them.
Well, and you know, that's the other thing, that the stories that never got out, and I do talk about them in the chapter on Rob Ford, is that he would go to Toronto Community Housing. He would go to Toronto Community Housing buildings and apartments which were infested with pests, which were bed bug ridden, which had shootings, which had violence. I dare say I don't see any politicians doing that these days.
At least not without cameras in tow.
And by the way, I did that too. I didn't see any left-wing media in the last year doing the kinds of things I did.
You know, there's so many things to criticize Canada's media party about. Hypocrisy is one of them, but I think what the hypocrisy leads to is the fact that when liberals say they care about things, care about ethnic diversity, care about the poor, I think what they care about is virtue signaling, that you think they care.
Right.
But when the cameras are off, they go back to their fancy clubs and their elite gatherings and their cliques, and they actually didn't mean it. Last word to you, Sue Ann. If there's one message here that you hope young journalists would take to heart, what would it be?
2 sides to every story, sometimes 3, and do your homework. And the other thing I would say that comes out of this book is that I found the Lib Left to be amongst the most intolerant, unempathetic, lack of inclusive, certainly everything they purport to be, they're not. And I saw that with Rob Ford, and I saw that with a lot of the poverty files and the downtrodden, and how they treated the downtrodden.
Very interesting. Sue Ann Levy, you are a true shoe leather reporter. You ask questions people say you're not supposed to ask. In some ways, that is the dictionary definition
of crazy.
Of crazy. Well, you've got to be crazy to take on the system, to ask questions you're not supposed to. You are a better journalist, my friend, than the whole bucket of those who would sling mud at you. So congratulations on your book. The book is called Underdog, Confessions of a Right-Wing Gay Jewish Muckraker. Sue Ann Levy. Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.